As you know, I've been doing an occasional series of women who are doing wonderful things in Scotland. And with me today is Tari Lang, who absolutely does wonderful things in Scotland. I know you as the chair of the Lyceum Theatre, but you do so many more things, a portfolio career. Tell us everything.
Well, yes, most of my life here, it's so lovely to talk to you, Ros. Most of my life in Edinburgh, since I moved here probably about 15 years ago, is now in a portfolio non-exec roles. So you're right, chairing the Lyceum is one of the things I do, and chairing anything would mean that it's a bigger role than anything else. So I do spend quite a bit of time on that and very excited about. I've always been excited about the theatre. I love the theatre. From the time I did O-level in those days, English literature, I just thought theatre was just a fabulous thing to do, to visit. I'm a failed actor. I wanted to be an actor, but I can't act. So this is the next best thing. So chairing the Lyceum is one thing. I also sit on the board of the Edinburgh Festival, a Fringe Festival Society, which is also another exciting organization, basically enabling the Fringe Festival, which, as you know, has anything between 2,000 and 3,000 shows each festival, depending on whether we have COVID or not, and full of the most exciting new thinking breakthroughs that the world has known, because of course the Fringe is a massive world recognized brand. I also sit on the board of Creative UK, which is an organization based in London, servicing the rest of the UK, basically investing and supporting the creative industries sector, which is, as we know, the biggest sector in economic sector in the country, and also the biggest growing. And lastly, I am a regent of the court of the Royal College of Surgeons, which is something I've just taken on. So I can't really say much about it, apart from the fact that it's exciting. And I can't say much about it because I haven't actually started doing anything there, but I'm looking forward to that. So all of this is about culture and venues and organizations that are interested in arts and culture, because I think I'm a great believer that arts and culture is basically the thing that helps glue the wealth and the health of a nation. Absolutely. That helps young children see inside and outside of themselves. And it helps tie communities together, not just within nations, but across nations. So that's basically what I mostly do now. I have never worked commercially in the cultural sector. As I said, it's always just been a love of mine. So I feel privileged that I get a chance of doing that now. And I think that the reason probably that I feel that I can contribute to the organizations I work with, and I have sat on, before this, I have sat on boards of the National Theatre of Scotland, the Royal Conservatoire, the Edinburgh International Festival. So the reason I think I can contribute, and I think the organizations feel that I can contribute, is that my background has purely been around two sectors. One is in business. I have run businesses for decades. And a lot of the time, I have run businesses in the technical sector, or at least working with clients in the technical sector. So, so it's
where and when where were you born? Where did you start? How did you get this stellar career that you have now? Tell us that journey, a little bit about that journey.
Well, I won't tell you the whole lot because it's going to take hours and you won't have time. We won't have time, but anyway. But I am. I'm a bit of a mix. I'm at home wherever I am, which is why I think I'm happy being in any city. I was born in Prague. My mother was born in London, half Polish, half Jewish. My father was Indonesian, born in Java, and I was born in Prague, brought up in Indonesia, moved to London, moved to Edinburgh. So I feel like my life has always been about moving around and saying, yes, why not? whether I had a choice or not as a child. So my career started in London, if you like, when I was there at the time of my early 20s, and I'm think I'm a risk taker, whether deliberately or not. When somebody says, "Why don't you do this?" If I like the sound of it, I will do it. Through my career, I had 2-3 jobs when I was in a much more younger time. Whenever I felt that I was not happy or this wasn't right, I would resign. I mean, it normally takes a few years to get there, but I would never think, if I resign now, what am I going to do next? I always somehow thought there'd be something on the other side of that door. And in all of the times there has been. So that's lucky for me. So therefore, with that background, I tend to be at home everywhere. So which is why when my husband then suggested that we might actually live in Edinburgh, I thought, why not? It's a wonderful city. Let's see what it's like living there. And I've never regretted that. So similarly, the jobs that I have taken has also been, somebody suggested doing something. I think, haven't done that before. Let's set up a business. The first business that I was involved with, that I set up with my business partner and brother, was in the early days, in the early 80s, of the tech and telecoms business. So we set up a small business, writing software and selling computers to support the writing software bit. So and nobody knew what that sector was going to go. Nobody knew what was going to happen to computing and telecommunications then. And then that kind of led me into a path of sticking with the telecoms and tech business, and I ran a reputation and PR company servicing that sector, which then led to all sorts of other things. So, I've had a career that's kind of, I would love to take credit for all of this, but actually it's sort of led itself really, and I've sort of followed it and loved it and created something out of whatever it was that
they were just opportunities.
No.
Right.
Opportunities, yeah. Sometimes accidents, happy accidents. So most of my career has been running gradually bigger and bigger companies, organizations, international companies. Some international companies that I'm hired, that I work for, and some that I set up myself, because I also had a company that based in London, Dublin, and Dubai, which I set up with 2 partners, main office being in London. So I have worked with different types of organizations, but almost always, certainly since I was in I'm just trying to think, in my late 30s, early 40s, in a leadership position of some sort, either as a founding partner or as an MD or as a CEO. And so I think I've been very lucky that I found myself in those situations. I've been happy to be able to take them up. So, crossing back to where I am now, I think the reason that I think I can contribute to the organizations I work with, and they also obviously think that I can, otherwise they wouldn't appoint me, is that I sort of bring some traits that are helpful, business leadership management traits. That's been my life.
Well, we'll talk about these traits in a minute, but I must say, I always associate you in my mind with working in Dubai. And you were mentioning Dubai there. Tell us a little bit what it was like to work in Dubai.
Well, I opened a business in Dubai, and before Dubai, I've worked in the Middle East quite a bit. I've worked in Jordan, which is a country I love, and I still love to this very day, and I have made lots of wonderful friends there. And then Dubai was the obvious next step, because that was the noughties were starting. So it was about 20 something years ago. Dubai was relatively new. There was exciting stuff going on in Dubai. That it was, there were Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum was sort of setting up this new city, this new way of living, this much more open society. So it attracted a lot of Western businesses, obviously also keen that there was a lot of business there, and indeed there was, and I also felt comfortable that I wasn't just, if you like, making money there, but I was also contributing, and again making good friends, and establishing new organizations, introducing different ways of doing things, better, worse, new, older, but different ways. So I spent a lot of time in Dubai, set up the office there, set up a company there, did a lot of business there, and loved it. I never lived in Dubai, so I used to spend probably 1 week every out of 2 or something like that, average, where I would spend time there, and I'd have a team there, an office, and would spend the days that I'm there working solidly with clients who would mostly be either government departments or government offices, essentially, including the ruler's office. So there was a lot of time that I spent working there. I've also spent a lot of time working in Oman, which is another country I just love. Again, working with helping government departments either set up new institutions, like a university in one case, a foundation in another, and just kind of trying to just introduce some of the best practice, which might work there, might not, and might be best practice, there might be better practice, but so introducing that and using it to establish teams, set up organizations, and provide an advisory service to exchange the way different people do things, because in the Gulf there are different ways of doing things as we have. I never always say that our way is better, it's just a different way, and merging the two is what I always used to find exciting about working in the Middle East, and the heat and the warmth.
What do you think, looking back, what have been the high spots, the high points in your career, and have there been any challenges? And if so, what were they?
It's been a lot of both. So, I mean, I guess the one high spot would have been my first experience of working with a ruler in the Middle East, which is wonderful, because there is a lot of formality that we assume we know or we read about, but actually it kind of reminded me that I've worked with senior people all my life, CEOs and senior people in government. It just reminds you that however formal people appear in public, actually behind closed doors, they're just people. They're good people, strong people, interesting people, powerful people, all of those, but they're just people. And actually you can engage and communicate and work with them as people. And I've always found that a great highlight. And it's always also reminded me, just in case I ever thought I was ever going to be pompous, I mean, just don't, because it just doesn't work. So that's always a highlight. I mean, obviously another career highlight was, I guess, the first time I was appointed CEO of a company called Edelman, which is an American company, and I happened to be in New York when my CEO, I was the deputy CEO at the time, resigned, and so the owner, the global CEO, then said, job's yours. I sort of had hoped that it was, the job's yours. So the flight back from New York was very exciting, and that was a highlight. And there are other highlights, lots of highlights of when you do something good and a client appreciates it. That's always a highlight for me. There are also, the highlights also about working with teams who feedback positive things, not just about me, or not particularly about me, but about what we're doing, about the company. Because I've always worked in commerce, so the focus has always obviously been income and and fees and all those sorts of things. But in the process of doing that, you've got to do business in a responsible way. So when people appreciate that, when the team appreciates that, I always find that that's a highlight. What are the challenges? Yeah, lots of challenges. And sometime in the late 80s, where the economy went down a plug hole, and I had to, for the first time, had to make redundancies and tell people about redundancies. That was tough, because these are people who are good, and had to be made redundant because of all sorts of choices that had nothing to do with whether they were good or bad. So that was awful, and including people that you get to know and you work with closely, and that's not good. I think highlights is also once or twice where I've sort of fallen out with colleagues. It's very rare. That's why I remember it, because I don't. There's always a way around falling out, but so I found those a challenge, because I don't like to fall out and disagree, but sometimes we do, and we just have to accept it. What are the challenges? I think that all the challenges that I've sort of felt have been about people. As I said, having to let people go, having relationships with other people that are not as supportive as I want it to be. I think some of the challenges also was, of course, that when you work so hard, you don't see your children and your family quite so much. And I did try to do that, but I think sometimes now, if I look back, I sort of think, well, actually, maybe I should have just said, you know what, I can't do that evening meeting or whatever it is. I can't do that Saturday workshop, because I should actually stay at home instead. So that's a bit of a challenge, but I didn't feel it as
sorry to interrupt, but I was going to ask you if you would have done anything differently in your career, but perhaps that is one of them, that you would have prepared to see your family a little more.
I think probably that yes, not probably. I think that would have been it, because I think there is a point, certainly halfway through, when I was sort of senior enough to be senior, but not experienced enough to be seasoned, when I thought that I needed to be everywhere. I didn't quite think I was indispensable, but it's as close as damn it. And so I did feel I needed to be everywhere. And actually, you don't. Things go on without you, and sometimes things go on better without you. So it didn't even particularly. I don't actually think it even particularly did enough value to make it worthwhile, is what I'm saying. Yeah. So I think I would actually be firmer about that now, with hindsight. Yeah, definitely. And and I now see my children, and I have a wonderful blended family of children and stepchildren, and I see the way they balance their work, and they're all now at a stage that I was then, having successful careers and all the rest of it, and some with children, and the ones who are actually doing that balance much more. And I look at them and I think, you're smarter than I was then. You're doing it much in a much more balanced and measured way. And actually, you know what? Your career is not suffering, and certainly your children and your family are gaining. So,
well, that's wonderful. I mean, these are two lessons that I picked up from you there.
Oh, by the way, can I just say, by the way, it's for males and females. This is not just kind of a women's trait. So I talk about what my children are doing, and it's both the mums and the dads. Sorry, Ros, I interrupted you.
No, not at all. I was just going to kind of summarize this bit by saying the two lessons that you come up with was people are just people. They might be incredibly powerful people, but actually when you meet them, they're just people, and you can engage at that level, and things go on without you. I think these are really two interesting lessons and pieces of advice. So with that in mind, what 5 traits, I mean, you've kind of given us a sniff of them, but what 5 traits or skills do you think have made you successful?
I think the first one is what might be seen by others as risk takers. You know, I take risk, but I never saw it as risk takers. I actually saw it as doing something that seemed sensible at the time. Okay, it might fail, but everything might fail, and everything might succeed. So I do take risks. I make decisions quite quickly. You know, sometimes it goes against me, but mostly it works, because once you've listened to whatever evidence I need, either in my head or physically, or you know, or listening to or read the evidence, I do take decisions quite quickly. So that's another one. I think that the people piece is really important. I think people, to me, are you know, I work with people, and I have colleagues, and and a lot of these colleagues, ex-colleagues, are actually also then become or are just friends. I mean, you and I met professionally, and we're now friends. I mean, at what stage do we decide, well, actually, this person is going to be my friend? This is not. It just happens. So I tend to be I tend to be quite open to that. So so you know, you see people as they are, whether they're powerful or not, their colleagues. So I think that's really important. And I think in a way it has made me easier to get to the other trait, which is that I take leadership very seriously. If you know that the people you work with can also be your friends, or you're friendly, you actually know also where the lines are, and they know as well, because you're quite open with that. So I'm quite content about, you know, taking leadership positions, whether they're people I work with closely or not. And with leadership positions, it's all of the areas that are important to me. You know, don't ask anyone to do anything that you wouldn't want to do yourself. You know, show by example, listen, all of those traits that everybody's talked about. I kind of like the sound of it. It's, you know, I sometimes think leadership is obviously a science and an art, but actually to me it's just behaving sensibly and responsibly and leading the way. So that's quite important to me. I also I do speak out. I think mostly it works. Yes, I do speak out. I do tell people what I think. What others?
Hey, those are five. I think these are.
Are they? Oh, all right.
I mean, let me summarize. Risk taking, which is wonderful, because they often say, a lot of the research shows that women are not risk takers. And so it's wonderful that you put risk taking as number one. Making speedy decisions, fabulous. Having people as friends. I've always found, and I know you do too, there's that blurring of boundaries as we've gone through our working lives. I'm very happy with that. I know other people are uncomfortable with it. I've always been very happy with that. I could never divide. I was always asked to divide up my friends and working people on my address book and my computer, and I could never do that. So I always ended up with one. I can't do that. And taking leadership seriously, having that governance, I know that you have that, because I've sat in on various meetings that you've been taking. And speaking out is just so important, that we as women speak out and don't feel that we shouldn't. So that's a particularly wonderful list. Anything else you would want to do?
Well, I suppose the only thing is, as you mentioned, that being women is that it's not, you know, it's not feeling apologetic about not feeling apologetic about sticking out is the other thing.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, and quite often women are feeling, you know, slightly tentative about being seen to stick out of the crowd, and I think it's that's another trait about just sort of standing up and showing yourself. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, the other thing I think is so important, as you said, is about theatre. I, as a child, was taken to theatre, and as a teenager, went to theatre a lot, which is because I ended up loving Shakespeare that way, because I went to theatre. So what's the future? I mean, Lyceum, I'm at every production of the Lyceum. What's the future of theatre, do you feel? Is it in jeopardy, or is it in safe hands? Well, it's in your hands, obviously, for the Lyceum, but is it in safe hands generally?
It's in danger, that's for sure. I don't think we'll ever lose it, because it is a human condition for us to do this. I do believe it will continue, but I think there is a very a big challenge for the theatre world wherever, which is the funding issue, that artists and crews are not getting the proper funding. Theatres are not getting the proper funding. There are buildings that are either crumbling or breaking down, and yet people still love the theatre. After the pandemic, people are coming back to the theatre and filling theatres, which is a great joy. But it is under threat, and whether it's existential or not, I'm hoping it's not, but it is under threat. It's also under threat by the big streaming and TV businesses that, of course, have deeper pockets, who then can afford to hire sites and crews and locations that they want. So that's a challenge. It's particularly under threat in Britain, because of the dependence, or a certain amount of dependence, on government funding, or public funding, not just government funding, public funding. So that is a challenge. But the theatre has never been more vibrant and more trailblazing and more experimental and more exciting than it is now. I think a lot of the changing issues, the changing social issues that we have, the changing relationships we have with the world outside, means that actually theatre making can break boundaries. The digital world has offered new ways. So it's it just becomes more exciting, but harder to sustain is probably the challenge. Now, I'm lucky that the Lyceums are established, and there are lots of theatres, new and old. But I also think there's one of the things about Edinburgh is that some people say, well, Edinburgh's got enough theatres. Do we need any more? You can never have enough theatres. I mean, you really can't. I mean, the big cities, I mean, you think about London, you think London's got enough theatres, but it's setting up, it's building new theatres, new independent, smaller theatres. And you know what? They're still full of people. People still want to see it. Absolutely. So I don't think you can ever have enough theatres.
Never enough theatres. It's a wonderful place. In your hands, clearly safe.
No, I've got a great team. That's why.
I know you're in France at the moment. Are you back in Edinburgh anytime soon?
Yes, very soon. In a couple of weeks, I'm hoping that we'll go back. But it's definitely back for the festival.
Absolutely.
And we must see each other then.
Let's do that. Thank you so much. It's been lovely.
Well, lovely talking to you.